In 35 years on the road, I learned something most people never do. Roads have moods. Most nights they don't care about you at all. Some nights they're mean. And once in a while, rare enough to remember, a road feels like it's paying attention. I was running just after midnight, the long hood of my Peterbilt cutting through the dark chrome stacks, catching moonlight when I eased off the throttle. The reefer hummed steady behind me, a sound so familiar it barely registered anymore. When I tapped the Jake brake, it barked loud and sharp, echoing back through the trees. Then the fog hit. Not drifting in, not rolling. 1 second the road was clear, the next it was like someone shut a door. Thick, dead fog that swallowed the headlights whole. My GPS blinked once, then went black. The radio crackled, dipped into static for a breath, then came back like nothing happened. That was the first thing I couldn't explain. The second was the sign. Welcome to Havenwood. Clean, reflective, newer than it should have been out here. I slowed without thinking. The road narrowed, lanes pulling in tight, and the town appeared all at once. Streetlights glowing soft yellow. Storefronts lined up too neatly. A diner, a small motel. All of it quiet, in a way towns usually aren't. No traffic, no people, no sound. I eased the rig onto the shoulder and shut it down. The silence afterward pressed in hard, like the world had been muted. I was still sitting there when someone stepped out of the fog across the street. She didn't rush. She walked carefully, like she wasn't convinced the ground would stay solid. Hoodie pulled tight. Backpack hugged close. She stopped a few steps away and studied the truck before she looked at me. "You come in from the highway?" she asked. "That's the only way I know how," I said. Her shoulders dropped just a little. "My phone died. GPS too. Fog just fell on me." "Same," I said. She hesitated. "I'm Claire." "Earl." We stood there a moment longer than necessary, both of us deciding whether the other made things better or worse. "I tried leaving," she said finally, "twice." "Fuel?" I asked. She glanced back toward her car and shook her head. Gauge dropped faster than it should have. It's empty now. That gave the fog some weight. I looked at the road, then back at her. "I can make another run at it." She didn't answer right away, just stood there, arms folded tight, eyes moving between the street and the truck. "You're not obligated," she said. "No," I agreed. "I'm not." The reefer hummed behind us, steady and familiar. The engine ticked softly as it cooled, like it was waiting on a decision. She exhaled. "If this loops again?" "Then we know it's not just you," I said. "That did it." She climbed up into the passenger seat, careful with her footing, like the ground might change its mind halfway through. She didn't relax once she was inside. Sat upright, hands in her lap, eyes forward. I fired the engine. The sound filled the street, solid and real. When I eased us back onto the road, the Jake brake echoed through the fog, stacks barking once like a warning. The truck settled into its rhythm. The reefer followed steady as a heartbeat, everything doing exactly what it was supposed to do. For 10 minutes, the road stayed straight. Then the fog thinned just enough for the sign to appear again. "Welcome to Havenwood." Same place, same angle. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. Somewhere behind us, the fog closed in again, quiet and patient. And that was the moment I knew this wasn't about getting lost. This place had made a decision. We didn't talk much at first. The truck rolled slow through the fog, headlights cutting narrow tunnels that never seemed to reach as far as they should. I kept my speed steady, hands loose on the wheel, listening to the engine more than the road. Claire sat quiet beside me, eyes moving constantly, not panicked, studying. After a while, she said, "Does it feel smaller to you?" The question landed heavier than it should have. I eased off the throttle just a touch. The fog thickened. I pressed back down. It thinned again. Neither of us said anything for a few seconds. Then she said, "It reacts." "Yeah," I said, "but it's not fast." I tried it again, a little slower, a little faster. Each time the response came. Not dramatic, not obvious. Just enough to notice if you were paying attention, like pressure adjusting in a sealed room. I pulled over near the edge of town where the street lights stopped pretending they led anywhere. We got out and stood in the road. The fog pressed close, but it didn't cross a certain point. I took one step forward. Nothing. Claire took one step past me. The air changed. Not colder. Heavier. Sound dulled. Like cotton pressed over the ears. She stepped back. The feeling lifted. She looked at me. That was wrong. "Yeah," I said, "and it wanted you to feel it." We didn't push farther. Instead, we walked the street slowly, counting steps without saying why. The town curved just enough that you never quite noticed it turning you around. Every block felt familiar. Not the same. Familiar. That was worse. Claire stopped near a row of dark storefronts. "This place isn't empty," she said. I waited. "It's just paused." That felt right. We talked more after that, not about the town, about normal things. Where we'd been headed, what kind of nights made time stretch too long. She asked how long I'd been driving. "Long enough to know when the road stops behaving like a road," I said. She nodded like that answered something she hadn't asked out loud. At some point she said, "You're not rushing." "No," I said, "rushing makes mistakes." She glanced at me. "You sound like you've learned that the hard way." I didn't answer. We tried another run at the edge of town, this time without the truck, just walking. The farther we went, the more the world seemed to drag. Lights dimming unevenly, footsteps sounding late, like echoes arriving before the sound itself. I stopped. Claire stopped too. We turned back together. The moment we did, everything snapped back into place. She let out a slow breath. "It doesn't want us wandering. Or it doesn't want us choosing wrong," I said. We stood there a long moment, fog curling at the edges of the street like it was listening. Claire finally spoke. "I don't think it's trying to scare us." "No," I agreed. "I think it's trying to teach us how to behave." That thought sat between us, heavy and uncomfortable. The town didn't move, didn't react, like it was waiting to see what we'd do next. By the time the fog lightened, if you could call it that, we'd been moving long enough that my sense of time felt unreliable. Not gone, just stretched. Claire noticed it before I said anything. "Does it feel like we've been out here longer than we should be?" "Yeah," I said, "and shorter at the same time." She frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "No," I agreed, which usually means it's accurate. We started finding things after that, not all at once, not dramatically, just small details that didn't belong to us. A scarf caught on a fence post, damp but not dirty. A phone lying face down in the street. Screen dark, battery dead. A grocery receipt, folded neatly and tucked into the crack of a curb, dated years ago. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Just absence. Claire picked up the phone, turned it over in her hands. "Why would someone leave this behind?" "People don't," I said, "not on purpose." We didn't talk for a while after that. The town felt closer now. Buildings leaned in just enough to notice. Streetlights hummed unevenly, some brighter than others, like they were being rationed. Claire broke the silence. Do you think it lets some people leave? I thought about that. About the road, looping cleanly, about the way it reacted to pressure but not panic. I think it decides, I said, and I don't think it tells you why. That bothered her. I could hear it in her breathing. What if it's already decided? She asked. Then we give it a reason to reconsider. She stopped walking and turned to face me. You talk like this is a negotiation. Everything is, I said. Some sides just pretend it isn't. We tested that, not by pushing boundaries, by doing the opposite. We stopped trying to escape. We stayed still, sat on a curb near the center of town and waited. No pacing, no searching, no arguments with the road. Minutes passed, maybe more. The fog thinned slightly. Not enough to clear, just enough to notice. Claire looked up. It doesn't like being ignored. That's a good sign, I said. The hum started again, low and distant, but this time it wasn't warning us. It was unsettled. We talked quietly then, about things we hadn't shared yet. Not confessions, just truths that slip out when silence stops being safe. She told me enough to understand what she was trying to get back to. She didn't need to say names. That urgency mattered. The town reacted differently when she spoke. Subtle things. Lights flickering. Fog pulling back a few feet, then creeping forward again. I noticed it, so did she. It's listening more to me, she said. Yeah, I replied. And that worries me. She swallowed. Why? Because it might think you're the easier one to keep. The hum deepened like it didn't appreciate being called out. That's when we realized the truth we'd been circling. This place didn't trap everyone the same way. It tested, measured, waited to see who would bend. Claire stared down the empty street. So what happens to the ones who don't? I didn't answer right away, because the town had already given us that answer, and I wasn't sure she was ready to hear it. The hum didn't fade after that. It moved. That was the first thing we noticed. It wasn't louder or softer, just elsewhere, like a presence shifting its weight beneath the town. You felt it more through your feet than your ears, a vibration that didn't match anything mechanical I'd ever known. Claire stopped mid-step. Did it change? Yeah, I said, and I don't like how intentional that felt. We followed it the only way you could follow something you couldn't see, by listening to what reacted to it. Windows rattled faintly on one block, but not the next. Street lights buzzed harder near certain intersections, dimmer near others. The fog thinned in strange pockets, revealing details that hadn't been there before. Or maybe had always been there, waiting. We found the first real clue behind a row of storefronts. A service door stood half open, warped at the hinges like it had been slammed repeatedly. Inside, the air was warmer, stale. The hum was stronger here, buzzing through my teeth like standing too close to a transformer. Claire pressed a hand to the wall. It's coming from below. I nodded. Yeah. Basements. Every building we checked after that told the same story. Cellar doors cracked open, stairs descending into darkness. Concrete floors dusted with footprints that stopped abruptly, like whoever made them had simply vanished. In one basement, we found chalk marks on the wall, lines, arrows, numbers crossed out and rewritten over and over again. Attempts. Claire crouched, tracing one of the symbols. Someone was measuring something. Or mapping, I said. We followed the strongest vibration to the oldest part of town. brick buildings instead of siding, iron grates instead of storm drains. The fog clung tighter here, like it didn't want us looking too closely. That's where the sound stopped being subtle. A low, rhythmic pulse rolled up through the pavement, slow and steady. Not random, not natural. Claire swallowed. That's not the town. No, I said. That's what the town is built around. We found a stairwell hidden behind a rusted gate, half buried by ivy and time. The air coming up from below was warm and smelled faintly of metal and damp stone. I stood at the top of the stairs longer than necessary. 35 years on the road teaches you when to walk away. It also teaches you when walking away stops being an option. We went down. The steps spiraled deeper than they should have. Too deep for a town this small. The hum grew stronger with every turn, vibrating through bone and breath. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a chamber carved straight into bedrock. Old machinery sat bolted into the stone. Not running, not broken. Just present. Pipes ran along the walls, disappearing into cracks too narrow to see into. Gauges with frozen needles. Switches worn smooth by hands that had used them again and again. Claire whispered, "This place was built." "Yeah," I said, "and not for what it became." We found notebooks scattered across a workbench. Pages yellowed, ink faded, names repeated across different hands, different years, people trying to understand the same thing we were. One entry stood out. The sound keeps it stable. When it stops, the town changes. Claire looked up at me. "They were maintaining it, or feeding it," I said. The hum shifted again, stronger now, closer. The lights flickered overhead, responding like nerves firing. Claire stepped back. "Earl, I don't think it wants us down here. That makes two of us." Something moved in the far tunnel, not a shape, not a creature, just a distortion like heat shimmer bending the air. The hum deepened. The town had noticed we'd found its heart. And whatever lived beneath Havenwood, it was starting to wake up. The hum changed when we moved deeper, not louder, closer, like we'd stepped into the same room as it. The tunnel stretched farther than it should have. The walls weren't uniform stone anymore. Sections looked melted, warped, as if the rock itself had softened at some point and then hardened again around whatever had passed through it. Claire ran her fingers along one of the grooves. This wasn't cut. "No," I said, "it was pushed." The air felt heavier the farther we went, not thicker, denser. Breathing took a little more effort, like the place was calibrated for something that didn't use lungs the way we did. We found old lights bolted into the walls, some still glowing faintly, fed by cables that disappeared into the stone. No generator noise, no obvious power source, just light, humming in time with the vibration beneath our feet. "Earl," Claire said quietly, "this stuff shouldn't still be working." "No," I agreed, "which means it isn't still working." That stopped her. "What do you mean?" "I mean it never stopped." The tunnel opened into a chamber so large it took a moment for my eyes to adjust. The ceiling arched high overhead, lost in shadow. The floor sloped gently downward toward the center, where the hum was strongest. And the stone there wasn't stone anymore. It looked thinned, like the rock had been stretched into a membrane, semi-translucent in places, faintly glowing from within. Patterns pulsed beneath the surface, slow and deliberate, like veins under skin. Claire backed into me without realizing it. "That's not a machine." "No," I said, "that's a boundary." The hum wasn't coming from the chamber. It was coming through it. We circled the edge carefully. The closer we got, the more the world seemed to lag. Movements trailing half a second behind, intent. Sounds arriving slightly late. My watch stuttered, second hand jumping forward, then freezing. Claire whispered, "I feel like it's aware." The word hung there. Aware didn't mean hostile, it meant attentive. We found more evidence along the walls, notebooks sealed in metal boxes, recording devices warped beyond use, diagrams drawn and redrawn, each version a little less confident than the last. One page was marked so heavily the paper had torn. It does not arrive. It unfolds. It does not move through space. Space rearranges around it. Claire read that twice. They weren't studying it. No, I said, they were trying to survive it. Another note written in a different hand. It learned us faster than we learned it. That one sat heavy. The pulsing beneath the membrane shifted. The glow brightened, then dimmed again, like a slow blink. The hum deepened. Claire grabbed my arm. "Earl, I think it knows we're here." I didn't answer right away, because I'd felt it too. Not a thought, not a voice. Just the unmistakable sensation of being included in something vast and patient. This wasn't a creature trapped under the town. The town was the shape the world took around it. We heard footsteps then, not ours. They echoed from a side tunnel we hadn't noticed before. Slow, uneven, deliberate. Claire whispered, "Please tell me you hear that." "I do," I said. A figure emerged from the shadows. Human-shaped but wrong in subtle ways. Too still between steps. Eyes unfocused, like they were looking past us instead of at us. He stopped at the edge of the chamber and stared at the glowing membrane. Didn't acknowledge us at all. Claire breathed, "Who is that?" I watched the way he stood, the way he breathed. "Someone who didn't leave," I said. The hum shifted again, stronger now, almost approving. And for the first time since we'd arrived in Havenwood, I understood the real danger. This place didn't kill people. It replaced what they needed to leave. And whatever lay beneath the town was very, very good at waiting. He didn't acknowledge us. Not when he stepped closer to the chamber. Not when the hum deepened, welcoming. Not when the glow beneath the membrane brightened in response to his presence. He stood there like a man waiting for a bus that had already arrived. "Hey," Claire said softly, more instinct than plan. "Nothing." I took a step forward. "Sir?" His head turned just enough to suggest he'd heard something. His eyes moved, but they didn't focus. They passed over us like we were reflections in dirty glass. Up close, he looked unfinished. Not injured, not sick, just subtly wrong. His clothes were clean but outdated, styles from different decades layered together without intention. His boots were worn smooth in a way you only see after years of repetition. Staying. He turned away from the chamber and began walking down the side tunnel. Claire looked at me. "We can't just let him." "I know," I said, "but we don't rush." We followed at a distance. The tunnel narrowed as we went. Stone walls closing in, the air growing warmer and heavier. The hum softened here, not gone, but distant, like a presence you could feel even when it wasn't in the room. The man walked without hesitation. He didn't look around, didn't stumble. He knew this path. That scared me more than anything else so far. He stopped at a small alcove carved into the rock. Inside was a cot, a table, a lantern glowing with the same faint, sour light we'd seen throughout the tunnels. A home. He sat down carefully, like someone lowering themselves into a routine they'd repeated countless times. Claire whispered, "How long do you think he's been here?" I watched the way he folded his hands, the way he breathed. Long enough to stop asking that question. She swallowed. "He's alive." "Yes," I said, "but he's not leaving." The man reached for a notebook on the table and opened it. The pages were filled, but not with dates or plans, just observations. The sound helps. It quiets the wanting. I don't dream as much anymore. Claire flinched. That's not good." "No," I said. "That's what comfort looks like when it costs too much." The man finally spoke, voice dry and unpracticed, like he hadn't used it in a while. "It doesn't hurt," he said. Claire stepped forward without thinking. "What doesn't?" He looked at her then. Really looked. For a moment, something like recognition passed through his eyes, then it faded. "Staying," he said. "You think it will, but it doesn't." The hum deepened, almost pleased. I felt it then, the pressure, not physical, emotional. A quiet suggestion pressing at the back of the mind. Rest, relief, no more choosing. The man smiled faintly. "It takes the edge off things, the wanting, the regret." Claire shook her head. "You don't sound happy." "No," he agreed, "but I don't sound afraid either." That was the lie, or worse, the trade. I knelt in front of him, keeping my voice steady. "Do you remember why you came here?" He frowned, genuinely confused. "I don't think that matters anymore." "Do you remember trying to leave?" He hesitated just a second too long. "Yes," he said finally, "but it didn't want me to." Claire stiffened. "It?" The man glanced toward the tunnel leading back to the chamber. "It knows when you're tired of running." The hum surged, strong enough now that my teeth buzzed. I stood up. "We're leaving." The man looked at me with something like pity. "You say that now." Claire grabbed my arm. "Earl, I know," I said quietly. "But we don't let it finish the sentence." As we backed away, the man returned to his notebook, already losing interest in us. The lantern flickered steadying when the hum settled back into its rhythm. We didn't speak until we were well clear of the alcove. Claire's voice shook when she finally did. "That's what happens if you stay." "Yes," I said. "And it wants us to see that." I looked back toward the chamber where the glow pulsed patiently beneath the town. "No," I corrected, "it wants me to see it." Claire turned to me slowly. "Why you?" I didn't answer. Because the truth had already started forming, heavy and unavoidable. Some people were easier to keep, and some were easier to replace. We didn't find the proof all at once. It wasn't waiting for us like a revelation. It was scattered, like someone had tried to erase themselves in pieces and failed. We noticed the first sign near the far edge of the underground network, where the tunnels narrowed and the air cooled just enough to feel intentional. The hum was weaker here, less confident, like the thing beneath the town didn't quite reach this far without effort. Claire stopped near a recessed wall where the stone looked different, smoother, recently disturbed. "Earl," she said quietly, "this wasn't always sealed." She was right. Faint tool marks ringed the edges, uneven and frantic. Someone had worked fast, sloppy, desperate. We pried it open together. Behind the stone was a narrow storage space no bigger than a walk-in closet. Inside sat a metal case, dented and scorched along one side. The kind used to protect equipment, or something valuable enough to move when everything else was being abandoned. Inside the case was a recorder, not ancient, not modern, something in between. The casing was scratched, buttons worn smooth by repeated use. It still had power. Claire pressed play before I could stop her. Static hissed. Then a voice broke through, clear, tired, very human. If anyone finds this, it means I didn't make it back for it. The man sounded calm, but there was strain under the words, like he'd practiced saying this without shaking. My name is Thomas Reed. I was passing through Havenwood on my way east. Got turned around. Same as you. Claire and I exchanged a glance. Thomas continued. The hum is the key. It's not just sound, it's alignment. When it's strongest, the town stabilizes. When it weakens, things slip. A pause, a breath. I figured out how to leave, but it doesn't like it. It notices when you stop fitting. Claire whispered, "He got out." "Yes," I said, "but listen." Thomas's voice grew quieter. "The trick is subtraction. You don't fight it. You don't break it. You remove yourself from its expectations." A sharp sound followed. Metal scraping stone. I changed my pattern, my sleep, my movement. I stopped responding to it altogether. When the hum dropped, I moved. Static surged. "It costs something," he added. "It always does." The recording ended abruptly. We stood there in silence, the faint vibration of the hum brushing the edges of hearing, like it was aware we'd uncovered something it preferred buried. Claire spoke first. "He escaped." "Yes," I said. She turned toward me. "Then we can too." "Maybe," I replied. "But look around." She frowned. "There's no sign he came back," I continued. "No notes past this. No proof he survived long enough to tell anyone." The hum shifted, stronger now, irritated. Claire hugged her arms around herself. "What does subtraction mean?" I thought about the man we'd seen earlier, the way he'd stopped wanting, the way the town seemed to soften around him. "It means you give up parts of yourself," I said, "until it can't tell you apart from the place." Claire's voice was tight. "That's not escape." "No," I agreed. "That's survival on its terms." The hum surged again, closer now, like the thing beneath the town was leaning in. We had proof. Someone had left. But whatever he'd done to make that possible, it wasn't free and it wasn't finished with him. The hum didn't surge all at once. It fractured. The vibration split into overlapping frequencies, some deeper than others, setting the stone walls trembling in uneven waves. The lights embedded in the tunnel flickered, not randomly, but in sequence, like signals traveling through nerves. Claire stiffened. "Earls, it's angry." "No," I said, "it's correcting." The recorder in her hand hissed softly, static bleeding back into the casing even though she hadn't touched it. The device grew warm, then hot enough that she dropped it with a sharp breath. The hum followed it. We backed away instinctively, the sound tracking us, pressing closer like pressure building behind a sealed door. Then the footsteps came again. Not the same man as before. These were faster, uneven, wrong in a different way. They echoed from the far tunnel, too heavy for one person, too disorganized for more than one. Shadows moved where the light should have held steady, stretching and snapping back like elastic pulled too far. Claire whispered, "That's not the same one." "No," I said, "that's something new." We turned and ran. The tunnel warped as we moved through it, not bending physically, but distorting in ways that made distance unreliable. Steps took longer than they should. Turns arrived too soon. The hum surged and dropped in waves, disorienting enough that my stomach lurched. We burst back into the main chamber just as the sound peaked. The membrane at the center pulsed violently now, light flaring beneath its surface. The patterns inside shifted faster, no longer calm or rhythmic. Claire grabbed my arm. "It knows we know." "Yeah," I said, "and it doesn't like loose ends." The distortion behind us resolved into a shape, not fully human, but close enough to make my skin crawl. Limbs bent at slightly wrong angles. Movement delayed, like the idea of walking came before the action itself. It stopped at the edge of the chamber. Then it spoke, not with a voice, with memory. Images slammed into my head. Roads at dusk, hands on a steering wheel, exhaustion settling deep into bone. A man staring into a mirror, trying to remember why leaving mattered. Thomas. I staggered, gripping the stone wall to stay upright. Claire cried out beside me, clutching her head. "He didn't escape," she gasped. "Did he?" "No," I said, forcing the words out. "He broke containment." The truth hit all at once. Thomas hadn't beaten the system. He'd destabilized it. Whatever he'd done, whatever subtraction meant, it had allowed part of him to pass beyond Havenwood's boundary. But the rest of him had been folded back into the thing beneath the town. Not absorbed. Integrated. The entity wasn't angry because someone had escaped. It was angry because something unfinished was walking free. The shape near the membrane shifted again, its outline blurring as the hum deepened to a bone-rattling pitch. The lights dimmed, then flared, responding to the pressure like overstressed circuitry. Claire looked at me, terror clear in her eyes. "If he's out there, then he's carrying this place with him," I finished. The implication hung heavy. Havenwood wasn't a trap. It was a filter. And Thomas Reed had slipped through without closing the gate behind him. The hum began to synchronize again, slower now, more deliberate. The chamber steadied, but the tension didn't leave. The entity had adjusted, learned, and now it understood something it hadn't before. Escape wasn't just possible. It was contagious. Claire whispered, "What does that mean for us?" I looked at the glowing membrane, the tunnels, the town wrapped around something far older than roads or people. "It means," I said slowly, "that leaving wrong might be worse than staying." The hum answered low and patient, like it agreed. The change didn't announce itself. It never did. The town didn't shudder or collapse or lash out. It adjusted the way a living thing does when it realizes its environment has changed. Quietly, purposefully. I felt it first. Not fear, not pressure. Familiarity. The hum softened around me, losing its sharp edges. The vibration no longer rattled my teeth. Instead, it settled into something almost tolerable. Like background noise you stop noticing after long enough. Claire noticed the difference immediately. "It's not pushing you," she said. "Why isn't it pushing you?" I didn't answer right away. I was listening. Not to the sound, but to what it wasn't doing. It wasn't probing. It wasn't correcting. It wasn't trying to convince me of anything. It had already accounted for me. "I think I've been doing what Thomas tried," I said slowly, just without realizing it. Claire frowned. "What do you mean?" 35 years on the road," I said. "No fixed schedule, no attachments that don't move. Same routines, different places. I don't fight change. I absorb it." The hum deepened, not angrily, affirmatively. "It can't pull me apart," I continued. "There's nothing rigid enough to tear." Claire took that in, then shook her head. "That doesn't make you immune." "No," I said. "It makes me compatible." The word felt wrong as soon as I said it. Around us, the chamber shifted, stone seams realigned. Passages we hadn't noticed before opened and closed, not violently but efficiently, like valves regulating pressure. The town was reconfiguring, not to trap us, to separate us. Claire gasped as the floor sloped subtly beneath her feet, pulling her a step away from me. She stumbled, caught herself, and looked back at me with panic rising fast. "Earl!" I grabbed her wrist before the distance could widen. The hum spiked for the first time since we'd entered the chamber. Not anger, alarm. Claire was wrong for this place. That was the variable. She wasn't adaptable. She wasn't drifting. She was anchored, pulled forward by something Havenwood couldn't replicate or replace. The entity pressed at her mind then. I saw it happen in her eyes. The momentary falter, the softening around the edges. Images flickered in the air around us, not projections, impressions. A small bedroom, a nightlight shaped like a star, a child coughing in the dark, reaching for someone who wasn't there. Claire cried out and dropped to one knee. "It's showing me what I'll lose," she said. "It's trying to bargain." The town didn't understand leverage. It understood need. I stepped between her and the pulsing membrane, feeling the hum wrap around me like static clinging to skin. "No," I said quietly. "That one's not yours." The vibration wavered. The town had reshaped itself to stop escape, but it hadn't planned for refusal. I understood then what Thomas had missed. You don't subtract yourself. You don't break the system. You deny it completion. I leaned close to Claire. "When it pulls, you push forward, not back. Don't fight it. Don't accept it. Just keep choosing what's not here." Her eyes locked onto mine. "And you?" I smiled, small and tired. "I'll keep it busy." The hum surged, not violent now, but strained. The chamber's light flickered, patterns stuttering as the entity tried to reconcile conflicting inputs. One of us fit, one of us didn't, and it couldn't have both. The town groaned above us, streets shifting, fog tearing open in long, silent seams. The road out reasserted itself, not offered this time, forced. Claire staggered to her feet as the pull reversed, the weight lifting from her chest. "I see it," she said, "the road." "Then go," I said, "now." She hesitated only a second. "You're not staying here." "I'm not staying," I corrected. "I'm stabilizing." She didn't like that answer. She didn't have time to argue. The hum split into dissonant layers, the membrane flashing erratically as the town struggled to hold shape. The entity recoiled, not in pain but in confusion. I had become a constant. Claire ran. The chamber collapsed inward as she reached the tunnel, stone ceiling behind her in smooth, seamless motion. The hum narrowed, focusing entirely on me now. The town didn't feel hostile anymore. It felt contained. I stood alone in the fading glow, the vibration settling into a steady, manageable rhythm. Havenwood adjusted around me, not as a prison, as a boundary. And for the first time since I'd rolled into the fog, the road outside wasn't asking anything from me at all. It was moving on. Time didn't stop in Havenwood. It stabilized. That was the difference. The hum settled into a narrow band, no longer searching, no longer probing. The town adjusted around me the way a river shapes itself around a stone that won't move. Streets aligned. Fog thinned to a constant, manageable veil. The pressure eased. I learned the rhythms. When to walk, when to stay still, when to listen instead of think. The thing beneath the town didn't speak. It didn't need to. It responded to consistency, not intention. I became a fixed point in a place that hated uncertainty. Sometimes I'd feel it reach. Not aggressively, just checking, testing for drift. There wasn't any. I kept myself simple. The wanting faded first, then the regret, then the sense of urgency that had carried me from mile to mile for most of my life. I didn't forget who I was. I just stopped needing to leave. The truck stayed where I'd parked it. Some days I'd sit in the cab, hands on the wheel, listening to the engine idle like a memory that hadn't quite learned how to move on. Havenwood didn't ask for more than that, and I didn't give it more than it needed. Claire came out of the fog just before dawn. The road straightened the moment she crossed the line. The sky cleared in uneven strips, like the world was remembering how to behave. Her phone powered on without explanation. Her car, somehow, sat idling on the shoulder ahead, fuel gauge hovering just above empty. She didn't question it. She drove. Miles passed before her hands stopped shaking. She made it home just after sunrise. Her son was still asleep, breathing steady, nightlight, casting soft shapes across the walls. Claire sat on the edge of the bed and watched him for a long time before she allowed herself to cry. She never told anyone about Havenwood. Not really. But sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet and the road outside hummed faintly with passing traffic, she'd feel a low vibration in her chest. Not sound, not memory. Alignment. She learned to recognize it, and she learned when to move on before it grew stronger.